Imagine a scenario of wickedness and depravity where humans seek relationships with angels and daughters become pregnant by their own fathers. Today, we will explore the story of Lot, a man whose choices placed him at the center of extraordinary events. Prepare to witness the judgment and wrath of God, culminating in the destruction of a civilization. So, please like, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us until the end of this story. The first accounts of Lot in the Bible are recorded in the book of Genesis, starting in chapter 11. The story of Lot, a biblical figure, begins with uncertainty about the origin and meaning of his name. Some scholars suggest that his name might represent the idea of a veil, indicating the importance of presenting oneself properly before others. According to the Bible, after his father's death, Lot left Ur of the Chaldeans and traveled to Haran with his grandfather Terah, his uncle Abraham, and Sarai. When Abraham departed from Haran after Terah's death, Lot followed him to Canaan. During a period of great famine in Canaan, Lot and Abraham went down to Egypt and settled there. However, after being deceived, Pharaoh of Egypt expelled Abraham and Sarai, causing Lot to return with them to Canaan. During this period, both Abraham and Lot prospered significantly, with their flocks growing to the point where the region could no longer accommodate them both, leading to disputes between their shepherds. The contrast between Abraham and Lot in the biblical narrative is mainly highlighted by their choices. Abraham is characterized by his obedience and trust in God's promises, which is reflected in how he conducts his life. His faith guides his choices, making him a remarkable example of someone who places the divine will above his own earthly interests. One significant episode is the visit of the three mysterious visitors in Mamre. One day, Abraham is sitting at the entrance of his tent under the oaks of Mamre when he suddenly notices three men standing before him. The intensity of the account suggests these visitors have an extraordinary nature, as Abraham quickly bows in reverence before them. In this moment, Abraham demonstrates notable hospitality by inviting them to stay and rest, offering water to wash their feet and food to restore their strength. During this encounter, Abraham and Sarah receive surprising and transformative news. One of the visitors reveals that by the same time next year, Sarah, despite her old age, will have a son. This divine promise aligns with an earlier one in which God assured Abraham that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky. The story of the visit in Mamre not only highlights Abraham's exemplary hospitality but also reveals the intimate and personal nature of the relationship between God and his faithful servant. On the other hand, Lot seemed increasingly influenced by the temptations of the material world and enticed by seemingly prosperous opportunities. Due to these differing paths, Abraham and Lot decided to part ways. During the separation, Abraham generously allowed Lot to choose the land he would occupy first. Abraham's decision to separate from Lot to preserve harmony and avoid conflict underscores his spiritual maturity. As a patriarch who values peace and communion with God above material disputes, Abraham contrasts sharply with Lot, who chose the lush plains of the Jordan Valley near the Dead Sea, close to Sodom. Attracted by the beauty and fertility of the region, Lot was influenced by purely material considerations. This decision, while understandable from a human perspective, highlights Lot's vulnerability to the world's temptations, contrasting with Abraham's spiritual steadfastness. After their separation, Lot settled in Sodom, quickly becoming involved in local affairs and seemingly attaining a prominent social position. However, the Bible describes the inhabitants of Sodom as extremely wicked, a situation that deeply distressed Lot. The Apostle Peter in the New Testament describes how Lot was tormented daily by the evil he witnessed in the city. While Lot was in Sodom, a battle occurred in which kings from Mesopotamia defeated the cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zor. In this conflict, all the goods of Sodom were plundered, and many inhabitants, including Lot, were captured. When Abraham was informed of this, he organized a rescue force that, in a nighttime battle, defeated the enemy army and recovered Lot's possessions and family. It was during this episode that Abraham met Melchizedek. Despite the war involving Sodom, Lot did not leave the city, and his story continued in the Bible. The narrative proceeds with the visit of angels to Sodom, where the city remained engulfed in chaos and depravity. The divine presence in the corrupt city highlights God's concern with human wickedness. This situation echoes the message of Jeremiah 23 verse 24, emphasizing that God is aware of the cries resulting from injustice. Divine intervention in human affairs reflects God's commitment to righteousness. God's righteousness and willingness to act against wickedness are evident as he declares his intention to investigate the sins of Sodom, showcasing his justice and rejection of iniquity. However, faced with such corruption, God decides to destroy the city. The biblical narrative emphasizes the depravity of Sodom's inhabitants, particularly in how they received the angels of the Lord. The men of Sodom, in their sinful behavior, desired to have sexual relations with the angels, which was a primary reason for the city's destruction. During this turmoil, Lot controversially tried to calm the situation by offering his daughters to the men of the city, reflecting his weakness and the corrupting influence of Sodom on him. At this point, the Bible delves into Abraham's courageous intercession before the Lord, demonstrating a genuine pursuit of divine understanding and justice. Aware of Sodom's impending destruction, Abraham dares to question God about sparing the righteous along with the wicked. This bold dialogue aligns with James 5 verse 16, which highlights that the prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. The narrative continues with Abraham's brave negotiation with God, where he questions the possibility of sparing the city for the sake of the righteous. Psalm 86 verse 15 echoes this context, proclaiming, "But you, Lord, are a compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness." This reflection underscores God's readiness to hear his servants' pleas and act with compassion in response to fervent intercession. The story reveals not only God's compassion, but also his readiness to respond to the prayers of the faithful. The importance of persistence in the pursuit of justice and mercy is highlighted in the biblical account of God deciding to destroy the cities of the plain, including Sodom and Gomorrah. Before Sodom's destruction, Lot and his family were rescued by two angels sent by the Lord. This rescue was due to divine mercy and God's commitment to the covenant established with Abraham. As the inhabitants of Sodom insisted on capturing the angels struck the men with blindness and ordered Lot to take his entire family out of the doomed city. Lot hesitated to leave, and the angels had to forcefully lead him out. During their escape, the family was warned not to look back, but Lot's wife disobeyed and was turned into a pillar of salt. Her transformation into a pillar of salt dramatically represents the consequences of disregarding God's instructions. Although Lot was spared from the imminent destruction, he was not free from the moral consequences of his choices. His decision to live near Sodom exposed his family to a corrosive environment, and the story reveals Lot's struggle to maintain his moral integrity amidst surrounding corruption. This struggle resonates with contemporary challenges faced by Christians who often find themselves in societies with values contrary to biblical teachings. After leaving Sodom, Lot and his two daughters moved to a small town. Fearful for their lives, they took refuge in a cave in the mountains, demonstrating a reluctance to fully trust in God's plan. This attitude contrasts sharply with Abraham's unwavering trust in God. Abraham demonstrated unwavering faith throughout his journey, even in the face of uncertainties and challenges. In contrast, Lot's decision to seek refuge in a cave symbolizes the human tendency to seek isolation when confronted with adversity. The cave represents not just a physical shelter, but also a state of emotional and spiritual seclusion. This raises the question of how traumatic experiences can impact a person's ability to fully engage with life and relationships. In this cave, a terrible event occurred. Fearing for their safety and concerned about preserving their family line, Lot's daughters, feeling isolated and with no prospects of finding husbands, devised a plan. They got their father drunk, and in a misguided attempt driven by a lack of moral and ethical understanding, each daughter lay with Lot on successive nights to conceive children. From this incestuous union, Moab and Ben-Ammi were born, who became the ancestors of the Moabites and Ammonites, respectively. These nations caused various problems for the Israelites throughout biblical history. The narrative of Lot in the Bible continues, highlighting his complex and controversial relationship with his daughters following the events in Sodom. However, after this point, Lot's story lacks further details. It is unclear whether he managed to rebuild his life or if he spent the rest of his days in the cave in the mountains where these events occurred. The Apostle Peter mentions Lot in his second epistle, specifically in chapter 2, verses 7 and 8, referring to the episode of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Additionally, in the New Testament, Jesus references Lot in the Gospel of Luke, placing him in a context that underscores the moral lessons from his life. Recalling the apocalyptic destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and the salvation of Lot, this account serves as a reminder for the end times, emphasizing the importance of readiness and obedience to God. The biblical narrative shows that Lot, a man who had the chance to learn from Abraham, the father of faith, did not guide himself by faith, but by his own perceptions and desires. This personal approach brought many afflictions and left deep scars on his family. Lot's story exemplifies the consequences of choices driven more by personal views than by faith and divine guidance, offering valuable lessons for contemporary Christian life. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah underscores the importance of making ethical choices even when facing cultural pressures. Paul, in his letter to the Romans, exhorts believers not to conform to the patterns of this world, but to be transformed by the renewal of their minds. Romans 12 verse 2. This passage highlights the need for contemporary Christians to remain steadfast in their faith and moral values, regardless of external influences. I hope the story of Lot can inspire us. Leave your opinion in the comments, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and click on one of the 2 videos that will appear on the screen to continue watching. Blessings and stay with God.